Pharynx is a muscular tube that connects the nasal cavities to the larynx and esophagus. It is common to both the gastrointestinal and respiratory tracts. It begins at the base of the skull and ends inferiorly to the cricoid cartilage. It is comprised of three parts: the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. Pharynx is a conical fibromuscular tube forming the upper part of air and food passages.
There are two types of muscle that form the walls of the pharynx, which is longitudinal and circular. Both types are innervated by the vagus nerve, except for the sternopharyngeus, which is innervated by the glossopharyngeal nerve. Now I will talk about the longitudinal muscle. This picture shows the posterior view and the longitudinal muscle of the pharynx. It shortens and widens the pharynx and elevates the larynx during swallowing. There are three main parts of longitudinal muscle, which the first one is sternopharyngeus, which is from the styroid process of the temporal bone to the pharynx and innervated by the glossopharyngeal nerve. And the second one is palatopharyngeus, which is from hard palate of the oral cavity to the pharynx and innervated by the vagus nerve. And the third one is esophagopharyngeus, which is from the eustachian tube to the pharynx and innervated by the vagus nerve. It contributes to the swallowing and opening of the eustachian tube. Next one is circular muscle. This picture shows the lateral view of pharynx. The circular muscle contracts sequentially from superior to inferior to constrict the lumen and propel the bolus of food. There are three main parts consist of circular muscle, which is superior pharyngeal constrictor, which is found in the oropharynx, middle pharyngeal constrictor, which is found in the laryngopharynx, and also inferior pharyngeal constrictor, which is found in the laryngopharynx and has two components, which is paropharyngeus and cricopharyngeus, and all are innervated by vagus nerve.
Hello, now it's my turn to tell you about the blood supply of the pharynx. So, let's check it out. For the arteries, there are ascending pharyngeal artery and ascending parotid artery. For the ascending pharyngeal artery, there are internal parotid artery and the external parotid artery. And at the ascending parotid artery is located from the facial artery of external parotid artery. Means the facial artery is located in the external parotid artery. The maxillary artery is above the ascending parotid artery. The tonsillar artery is below the ascending parotid artery, and the artery is lower than the facial artery. For the veins, the infiltrated venous is positioned upper from the other parts, and the social facial vein is positioned close to the mouth, and also the interjugular vein is located inner and lower from the facial vein and separated closely.
Hi, today I would like to talk about nasopharynx. Nasopharynx is pronounced as nasopharynx. It is not pronounced as nasopharynx as we used to do it. Let's look at the facts. Nasopharynx is the upper portion of the pharynx, which is also the upper part of the throat behind the nose. It extends from the base of the skull to the upper surface of the soft palate, which separate between nasopharynx and oropharynx. The space covered by nasopharynx is the space between the internal nares and the soft palate that lies above the oral cavity. It is about 2 to 3 cm wide and 3 to 4 cm long. Nasopharynx remains open even when surrounding muscles flex, so that the person can continue to carry on respiratory functions. Nasopharynx contains adenoid tissue, which is the pharyngeus, tonsils, the lymphoid tissue structures in the posterior wall of nasopharynx. It fights against infection and the opening to the eustachian tubes, which leads to the ears. It provides a major drainage path for lymphatic fluid and generally drains into the throat, nose, or ears. Since the nasopharynx is made of tissue that traps bacteria and viruses that enter through the nose and mouth, Testing the secretion from the nasopharynx helps find viruses and bacteria that may cause illness or disease.
The oropharynx is the middle part of the pharynx and located between the soft palate and epiglottis. It is also known as oral part, while the nasopharynx known as nasal part and laryngopharynx known as laryngeal part. It is involved in the voluntary and involuntary phases of swallowing. It is also a common passageway for food and air. It contains the following structure, which are posterior one-third of tongue, the lingual tonsil, the palatine tonsil, which located between the palatopharyngeal arch and palatoglossal arch, and the superior constrictor muscle. The most prominent feature of the oropharynx is the two folds that are termed as palatoglossal arch and palatopharyngeal arch. The palatoglossal arch contains palatoglossus muscle, which travel from the soft palate to the lateral aspect of tongue, and the palatopharyngeal arch contains palatopharyngeus muscle, which travel from the soft palate to the lateral part of pharynx. Because of the different insertion point and the direction of the arch travel within the oropharynx, they create a triangular space known as tonsilla fossa, which contain lymphoid tissue known as palatine tonsil. And the palatine tonsil can become inflamed due to the viral or bacterial infection, which known as tonsillitis.
Hey guys, now let us move to the next part, which is laryngopharynx. Laryngopharynx can be found between the hyoid bone and the larynx and the esophagus. It is a part of the pharynx. Laryngopharynx is an inferior narrowed region of the pharynx. It extends inferiorly from the hyoid bone to the larynx and esophagus, just like what I said just now. It terminates at the superior border of the esophagus and the epiglottis of the larynx. It permits passage of both food and air. Laryngopharynx is lined by stratified squamous epithelium, and it contains epiglottis. Now let me show you the structure of epiglottis. There you are. Epiglottis is a structure that protects the opening to the lower airways, which is the glottis. It is strong but flexible fibrocartilage flap that comes out of the larynx into the laryngopharynx.